Once we weed whipped a site, the next step that we want to do is lay down some sort of mulch layer, and usually for us that means corrugated, half corrugated cardboard or some sort of paper. We've done some research in the past couple of years about what the best methods of this sheet mulch is, and we've come to the conclusion that this stuff, it's basically it's kind of 2/3 of a sheet of cardboard. So typically cardboard has two flat sides and then a corrugated thing in the middle. This is basically just corrugation and flat. So it can still roll, and it comes in these are 48-inch by 250-foot sheets of this cardboard. We've used agricultural weed suppressant paper in the past, and depending on the area that we're working, we'll actually probably use different methods. We did some research and found that it basically comes down to cost. So whichever is kind of a cheaper option is the best option. If you're covering if you're using a covering over ground, it's gonna suppress weeds for some amount of time. The thing that we've run into is how long does it suppress those weeds? So we really don't want this paper or sheet mulch to stick around longer than a year. Once it's around for longer than a year, it's probably not going to decompose that well, and it just becomes kind of biotrash. So we're trying to reduce that, and this stuff decomposes pretty quickly, and still at the same time basically protects our new plants from weeds. In the past, we've also used recycled cardboard. So Santa Cruz Bikes is just up the road, and bike boxes are pretty big. So there was some amount of time, we actually did this for a while, where we would kind of dumpster dive Santa Cruz bike boxes out of their dumpster and use those as sheet mulch. The thing with that kind of stuff is that there's pigments on the boxes, there's staples in those boxes, there's tape, there's all sorts of stuff that we really don't want in the soil for any long period of time. So even though we're not recycling, this is new material, it's kind of turns out to be kind of the best option. And we can lay it out really fast, and a lot of it, there's not a lot of prep time that we have to do. So it's pretty useful. Once this is down, then we try and lay our regular mulch, which is ground up trees from upper campus. Nate's going to talk more about that.
So really at the beginning of the restoration site, we come in and mow everything. We want to get all the weeds as low to the ground as possible, and as well as stopping them from dropping seed. So it's really timed mowing is really important. After that, we are going to be coming in with paper, and we basically lay out a ton of paper, and that's where you guys usually come in. We lay out paper, and then we get wheelbarrows, and we dump all of this mulch on top of that paper. The combination of the two really helps to suppress weeds. The paper really adds a lot of duration to the amount of weed suppression we get. But the mulch really does help to kind of seal the deal. We put on maybe about an 1.5 or 2 inch layer of mulch. Sometimes it gets a little deeper, but at that point it really becomes difficult to plant plants in that. But with more mulch you get more weed suppression. Basically this mulch will be active on the site for a couple of years until it breaks down and kind of turns into a rich soil. Mulch is really great because not only is it suppressing weeds, but it's helping to maintain moisture in the soil. So while we have planted a lot of these plants, we don't water, or we try to water as least as possible. Basically, if we're planting in the fall and going into winter and early spring, we have all the rains to help us water in all these plants, get them established. The mulch helps to retain moisture, and that really in itself helps so much to get our plants established, because it's really almost impossible for us to water the whole entire site, especially with no student workers. We do use sprinklers sometimes, but we try not to. That's mainly on plots that are planted later. but more or less, if you're planting in fall up to early spring, no supplementary water is necessary unless it's like a really drought inducing soil type, in which case you might need to add extra water. Uh, yeah, but more or less, a lot of these plants are adapted to this region, so ultimately they should be able to survive without all this extra care and effort that we would be putting in. So our mulch comes from the UCSC upper campus. It's mainly a lot of stuff from what the grounds crew is clearing and shredding up. So we get stuff like oak, we get redwood, which is this right here, and then sometimes we even get things that we don't necessarily want, which is like bay laurel. And as mentioned in previous weeks, bay laurel is a vector for Phytophthora, so that is certainly like a possibility that we could potentially be introducing this pathogen into our restoration sites. Thing to think about with this mulch is that where in nature do you see mulch? Like, where do you see trees or plants that are composed and like chipped up and kind of like this texture? And to be honest, there's not really a lot of places you find that. Where I have seen it is in the Sierras and in wild places where you see down trees that have been breaking down for a really long time. So you see logs that are just basically splintered and like all like decomposed through uh, decomposer fungi as well as insects and invertebrates. So I'm not sure I totally embrace it because you are shifting soil communities potentially. There is like bacterial and fungal composition with most soils, although it is certainly different between habitat types. Because in grasslands, you're definitely kind of more of a bacterial uh, dominated community, where in forests you have a lot more organic matter and kind of more of a fungally based community. But ultimately, they're both active in this system, and that, I mean, is a question that is something to ponder as well as something to look into if it's something you're interested in. Could be a really good option for a thesis. So one of the initial steps in our process of restoration is weed whipping. As you can see behind me, we have some grasses and other weeds that are just probably not that bad compared to what's most around me. But initially we want to make sure that we get the weeds as low as possible so that the paper doesn't get ripped and it goes on as easily as we can do it. And if the paper does get ripped, it makes it more of an opportunity for weeds to get through those holes. So yeah, having a level surface or something close to it is definitely going to be really imperative to us. So first step is weed whipping. I don't know if you guys have ever used one of these before, but it is a gas-powered 2-stroke weed whipper. It's pretty fun to use. It's a little bit dangerous, which is why I have all this gear on. Face shield, glasses, and these pants. Yeah, check it out. So you can see it is looking significantly different than it was before the weed whipping. Pretty low cut, which will make it really easy for us to lay paper and mulch. And yeah, that's pretty much how things get started.
Alright, so this is the joy, the love, this is where all the enthusiasm comes out for restoration. We're here in our Wetland 5 plot. This is this year's plot. It's caused us all sorts of problems, so we still have areas that we're mulching. So we've got Nate and Kyla and me all mulching right now. And it's windy. We don't want to be mulching in the wind because you got this paper that's flying all over the place. It's a real pain in the you-know-what. So basically right now we're running back and forth between our mulch pile and our site here with wheelbarrows to bring mulch over here. We're rolling out paper and this is our main method for mulching and prepping a site.
Alright, so when we are spreading the mulch out over the paper, we're looking for a very distinct layering, level of mulch on the paper. We don't want it so thin that any movement is gonna brush the mulch away and then the paper's exposed. But we're not looking for it so thick that we're digging and digging to get to the paper. Because the plants we're planting are pretty small, and so if the mulch is too thick, they can get buried by the mulch. So we're looking for an in-between, 3 inches or so, 2 to 3 inches, and that way nothing's gonna be exposed by light movement, but it's not that we're digging to get to the paper. And then the mulch is really here for weed suppression and also to help the plants retain moisture, and it does a really good job of both. Another point, when we are laying out the paper, we are looking for at least a 6-inch overlap. So you can see that this is about 6 or 7 inches, which is perfect. And that's really important because if the paper isn't overlapped enough, it can split apart and weeds will just grow up straight through that crack all the way down. And it definitely has happened to us before. So the bigger the overlap, the better, but not so much that we're wasting paper. So 5 to 6 inches is what we found to be good.
Don't forget to cover your edges. This is very important. The edges pick up wind, so a little gust of wind, and your edge, what does the edge do, Kyla? Oh, it's the worst.